Are you ready to do the skit? You really like being in those skits, don't you? I do. Did you hear that? I gotta go.
At last. Welcome, Theo. As you have no doubt guessed, I am Bizvius. Aren't these supposed to be like nice wingback chairs? Budget cuts. Please sit. Stupid janky chairs. I like leather better. Welcome to the real world. Aren't we in the construct? Isn't everything a construct? Aren't you supposed to give me some spiel about this feeling I've had my whole life? I know exactly what you mean. I don't think you do. You've gone down the rabbit hole, Theo. Let me show you the real world. Aren't you supposed to offer me a choice? Once you choose, there is no going back.
What? Blood pressure.
Welcome to the real world.
That's neat.
Hello and welcome to the Nerd Card. I'm Phil.
I'm Chuck.
And it is Matrix Day, baby. I am excited.
Yes, you are.
I cannot wait for the Matrix. And I don't have to anymore. Here we are.
Well, no, I mean, you have to wait for any of them. All four are available to watch at your leisure.
That's a good point. It is. It's a very good point. Yeah, they're all right there. On HBO Max, you can watch all of them.
Oh,
It's pretty cool. So we're going to dive right into the first one because, well, frankly, it's the best one.
yeah, agreed.
It really is. And it stands alone. It's a really nice introduction into the world.
Yeah.
But it could stand on its own as its own movie. Obviously, we went a little further than that as well.
Well, yeah, I mean, of course it was written to stand on its own as the first movie because no one knew how it would do in the theater when it came out in 1999. It was a groundbreaking concept, and
Sure.
groundbreaking films usually, when they get sequels, are sequels that are planned after the fact. I mean, not always. I mean, Star Wars is different.
Always some white boy got to invoke the Holy Trilogy.
Star Wars, of course.
But that was filmed as its own movie, kind of much like the Matrix. The original Matrix was filmed as its own standalone.
Well, and it's fair to point out that they did have an idea of where it would go if it was
Sure.
successful. Like they knew, Zion existed. They knew all of those things. But it was, seriously, they took an advance from a studio to get started. They filmed the first 10 minutes using the entire advance.
What is this? What is this? Where's all the money?
I can imagine. I mean, it's a very heavy CGI film.
Yes.
And the CGI still stands up pretty good in today's day and age.
That it does.
Yeah.
Which is surprising, actually.
Well, I think a lot of that has to do with the gritty kind of style that it's filmed in.
Sure.
That lends itself to aging better. It's not a
I'd
crispy, clarity, Krispy Kreme, crispy 4K movie.
Right. Well, and that actually continues into the fourth one, amazingly enough. I think a lot of that style, we're going to get to that,
Yeah.
don't worry. But a lot of that style that's developed in the first film can be attributed to the cinematographer for the movie, which is Bill Pope.
Yeah.
Or rather, he's director of photography, I should say. But he's responsible for getting the setups that did bullet time for...
Yep.
all this stuff that was just groundbreaking.
Well,
in the
bullet
first
time.
movie.
I mean, you're talking groundbreaking, gigantically groundbreaking.
How many movies has bullet time been parodied in?
How many times has it been imitated?
Yeah.
Dozens.
But this was the first instance of it.
Yeah, because no one had seen it before.
It was a brand new technology, and amazingly enough, using a technology that was old.
Sure. I mean, but they did it so well. When you first saw that in the theater the first time an agent does his movements, you were like, whoa.
Oh, yeah.
It was super, super cool.
It's crazy. And the way they pulled off that effect is just still camera.
Right.
Still photographs. in rapid succession, and it's just so freaking cool,
Right.
And it just groundbreaking.
And when
But-
Keanu did the lean back and all, I mean,
Yeah.
that was incredible.
exactly, and moving around him, it's
Yeah.
just a whole boatload of cameras that each took a photograph in rapid succession.
Well, I mean, they're very innovative directors, the Wachowskis.
Without a doubt.
Yeah.
Yes, without a doubt. And I mean, they've gone on to do some pretty interesting projects since
Yep.
that have failed miserably commercially. But
Some of them had a following. They had a show on Netflix called Sense8.
Sense8, yes.
That was interesting. I've seen about half of it. It's good. It's just it didn't grab me like The Matrix does.
Sure. Well, and a lot of characters from Sense8 show up in the fourth one. Or not characters, actors from
Yeah.
Sense8 show up in the fourth one. Either way, I really want to get into, actually speaking of the cinematography, there's a subtle hint to where we are each and every time we're either in the Matrix, in the real world, or even in the construct.
Yeah.
And that is the tinting of the film. So in the Matrix, everything has a green tint. Or how about, hey, we're in the real world now, blue tint.
Yep.
And in the construct or the training programs that are made by the humans,
Yep.
it's all a yellow tint.
Yep.
So it's really cool, and just subtle nods. You can tell where you're at and, which construct you're in, basically.
Absolutely.
But it is interesting to me that this is one of a rare movie where they actually required the cast to read philosophy
Yeah.
ahead of time.
Yeah. That and it is an odd way to do things, but it just shows how important the concept of this movie, this script was to the Wachowskis. They
Absolutely.
to them, it's not just making a film. This is an expression. This is an allegory, as if they've said. For what they said, there was an allegory for like coming out or transitioning.
Well, the original film was. As it goes on, actually, Lana Wachowski is on record as saying that the entirety of the film franchise is about corporate exploitation.
Yes,
actually.
yeah, they had said that also. Yeah,
But you're absolutely right. That's a big part of it. In fact, there was a character in the first movie called Switch.
yeah,
And Switch was intentionally or originally going to be male in one version, or in the real world or in the Matrix, and then female in the other. And it would have been a really cool thing to do.
Sure.
And it just didn't happen.
Oh, it was 1999. I don't know. The studio was probably like at that time.
Right. And
you're
Warner
talking-
Brothers just...
It's been 22 years now since it came out.
Sure.
23 years. So it's things have changed in society, and I'm sure the studio at that time was not going to do that.
Well, and I think in 1999 it would have had a big impact.
Sure.
Well,
Would have had a huge impact.
I'm male in the real world, but I identify as female. So when you show up in the Matrix, you're female. That's your residual self-image.
Right.
It just makes sense. I don't know why it. And I do know why. It's 22 years ago. It just wasn't the same world we live in now.
Sure. I mean, times changed, things evolve, things change.
Right, but to do that in a movie today, people would go, "Yeah, all right, I get it."
Yeah, sure. Yeah, but that's the society we live in today. It's not the same as 1999.
Not nearly the same, but it was a cool concept that never really came to fruition, and I thought it should have, frankly.
Yeah.
But going back to the philosophy a little bit, the book that all the cast members were required to read was Simulation and Simulacra.
That's a lot.
I don't even know what one of those
I would have a
words
hard time
means.
reading that sentence.
Yeah. I did. I had it written down. I had to write it down because I never would have got it otherwise. But that's actually the book that is hollowed out that Neo has at the beginning of the movie when he has his friend or whatever come
and
over.
they plan that into the fourth movie in titles of different places within the Matrix.
Oh, yeah. There's an awful lot. Well, we'll get to that in a second.
Yeah.
But the fourth movie, let's just say this. It is heavy-handed.
Yes.
very heavy-handed.
But that's a ways down. We got other things to talk about first.
It is. We got a lot to talk about first. I think with the first movie, what we're seeing is, as I said, an introduction into that world and an introduction of the characters that we're going to come to know over the next few movies.
Sure.
Not the least of which, of course, is Morpheus.
At last.
Yeah.
Morpheus is, and we've had this discussion a few times off camera and once on camera.
Sure, yeah. We don't keep every take we do, guys.
No, we sure don't. We sure don't. But Morpheus is, I mean, essentially he's the main character of the first movie.
Oh, 100%. Morpheus is the most important character in the first movie in my opinion. Without Morpheus, he is the leader. He is the one who believes, he believes in Neo when Neo doesn't believe in Neo.
Sure.
Without Morpheus believing in Neo, Neo wouldn't become the one. He wouldn't transition into that role.
Right.
He goes and believes in himself to turn into the one because he feels that Morpheus is so important he needs to save him.
Exactly right. Yeah, and without Morpheus instilling that in him, you just don't get the one.
Or without Morpheus just being the leader he is.
Sure, yeah.
Neo wouldn't feel, Neo really feels the need. And when Neo, goes and, obviously Smith has Morpheus, I must get out of this place. When it's the smell.
It's the smell.
When he's got him chained up in that room and Neo jumps back in, they're going to pull the plug on him in the real world because he's going to give him the coast to Zion.
Yeah.
And he says, no, Tank, I'm going back in. He's like, no, you're not. And he's like, oh, I sure am. Mm-hmm. And he goes in, and Trinity goes with him, which Neo didn't even want Trinity to do that, but she goes with him. Neo doesn't believe he's the one then.
No.
But he believes he's got to do something to try to save Morpheus.
Yeah.
And while he's doing that, his just performs as the one, whether he wants to or not.
Well, it's more of it's an innate thing. It's more like instinct at that point.
100%. That's exactly what I was looking for.
Yeah.
It's instinct, and it was survival. And it was in him, and it came out and manifested through that saving of Morpheus.
Big way.
Yeah.
And it actually leads to, of course, his death, where he's able to, when he comes back from that, through True Love's kiss, I guess.
What you got here, that's worth living for.
Who knows?
He's the man when he comes back from that.
He is the man. He's seeing everything in green, stringy stuff.
One hand fighting agents, pulling bullets out of the air.
Oh, yeah.
Jumps into Smith and explodes him.
Which becomes a much bigger issue down the line. Actually, let's get into that.
Sure.
So with the second movie, we explore that a little more.
Yeah.
As Smith says, part of you imprinted onto me, something changed, basically. Right. And Smith becomes a rogue agent.
Our connection. I don't fully understand how it happened. Perhaps some part of you imprinted onto me, something overwritten or copied.
Oh yeah, rogue agent, rogue program of the system. He's no longer, something from Neo in a sense set him free of the system.
Yeah.
And as you said, he's now a rogue, and he's off to do his own agenda.
It is unplugged, apparently free.
Yeah.
So to speak, as
decides
he says.
to replicate himself.
Yes, he figures out he found Control C.
Yeah, and then he Control V's all over the place.
All over the place, yes.
Yeah.
Which of course becomes a much larger problem down the line as well. But what we get out of that is just more action. In my opinion, the second film is totally action.
It is largely action. I mean, you have some very big sequences. The sequence that was brought to you by General Motors. The car chase scene,
which is one of the best scenes in the movie.
It's
it
great,
really is.
If you've never noticed before, every not the semi trucks,
right,
but everything else is a General Motors product.
It is, and they donated 40
except for the
cars.
Ducati motorcycle, of course.
Well, of course, yeah, not the Ducati, but they donated 40 vehicles for it, and the Wachowskis totaled 40 of those vehicles, all of them.
But it's a really fun scene.
Yeah,
you know, and the good thing, one of the fun things about the Matrix is when you have a scene inside the Matrix, you can defy physics because they're not in the real world.
Right.
They're in the computer simulation, and the laws of physics don't really apply.
Not even close.
So,
which is good for the cars that flip over.
Well,
for no
because
reason.
then you can make action sequences that just don't make sense, you know, physics wise, because there is no physics.
Yeah, that's we were watching it. It was a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
And Chuck's like, "What caused that car to flip over?"
Yeah, it just flips over because it looks cool.
Because it looks cool, exactly.
Yeah.
But you're absolutely right. You can play with the physics a little bit, so it does make a little more sense. It doesn't really, but it does make a little bit more sense.
And you see another side effect, another thing we talked about. You see a side effect of Neo growing into himself, and
oh sure,
and you see that how that affects Trinity and Morpheus, who in the previous movie would not engage an agent on purpose,
right?
And they both. Yeah, let's go fight that agent.
Yeah, both of them square right up to an agent.
Yeah,
because I have that written down here too, because they see what Neo can do and they know what is possible.
Right.
So they know that the agents are fallible. They know they're beatable.
Like a not to make a sports analogy, but like a good sports leader, he makes his other members of his team stronger.
Pain heals. Chicks dig scars. Glory. Last forever.
Right on.
Absolutely. 100%. He takes over that, what Morpheus did for Neo in the first movie was be that leader and cause him to be forged into the one.
But Morpheus is still the leader.
Oh, without a doubt.
Yeah.
He is still the leader. But Neo takes on that role, I think, within the Matrix.
Yeah, he believes in himself, right? He believes that he is the one. I mean, he does at the end of the movie because he calls up the machines and says, "Yeah, I'm coming for you."
With an awesome Rage Against the Machine song.
Yeah, and flies away and says, F words, I'm going to get you.
Yeah, oh yeah.
And, and they ended it that way, of course, because then it's a self-contained movie, right? And you can just imagine that humans are free and have a nice day. But since it did so well and we moved into these next movies, it really had a good effect in the rest of the series of now that he's the one, you can really see him. I mean, agents come up to Neo and he's just like, yeah, whatever.
Yeah. Upgrades.
Yeah. I mean, even Smith, the very classic scene where they're in the park, all concrete park, where Smith has hundreds of Smiths come out there to fight Neo.
Oh, yes.
And Neo is it's fighting all of them. He only gets overwhelmed from sheer quantity.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Definitely.
But he still ends up not losing.
Yeah, it's not the fighting style of Smith. He's not done anything more impressive or anything like that.
Yeah.
It's so many of them.
Tons, and that's the only place really, I think, in the series of films that the CGI has a little bit of a failing. It doesn't quite stand up to today. There's a couple spots you can see that it looks video gamey.
Sure.
Just a couple spots. It's not horrible, but you can see it. It's like, there it is. You can see it clearly when you're watching it.
Throughout that sequence, which the creators called the Burly Brawl as it was being shot, there are 4 instances of CGI.
Yeah.
Or entirely CGI scenes. And, watching it back when it was released, the technology watching it wasn't as good.
No.
So it was harder to pick those moments out.
Well, yeah.
But now, my goodness, you watch it.
DVD versus 4K. Big jump in picture quality, so you can tell.
Yeah, and it definitely changes. You can point them out in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
But, back when it was released, that wasn't the case.
No, I mean, you knew it was CGI because you knew Neo couldn't actually do the things that he was doing, like a human couldn't actually do the things he was doing.
Or the camera angles were just impossible.
Right.
They wouldn't,
But it wasn't as blatantly obvious as it is now.
Right, and that's really, in my opinion, the only thing in the trilogy that kind of aged poorly.
I would agree.
Is that particular scene, but it's still a cool scene.
Oh, it's a great scene.
I like it a lot.
Yeah.
So it's a great fight scene between 2 people, but it's hundreds.
Right.
Which is interesting.
It is interesting.
The other thing, so yeah, Neo at his height. I've got all the others get better. It's right here. It's all right here.
I didn't even look at that.
He didn't peak at all. The other thing that we get to see in the second Matrix movie that we didn't see in the first one was Zion.
Yeah.
And more like, you keep saying, Morpheus is the leader and Morpheus is the leader. You bet your ass he's the leader.
Yeah.
And you really, really see that in Reloaded as he addresses the entirety of the human population. Yep. And he's almost seen as a spiritual leader.
He is, and boy, his boss in the military hates that.
Oh my goodness
He
gracious.
don't like him even a little bit.
Locke. Deadbolt, as they call him.
Yeah.
Deadbolt. His name is Locke. And of course, that stems from like kind of a love triangle between him.
Yeah, that's underplayed, but
Naomi.
it's implied, and it's not a big part of the movie, but it's there.
It's there, yeah.
But yes,
it's literally one line. Trinity says, "What's the deal between them?"
She used to be with Morpheus,
Niobe.
and now she's with Locke. Oh,
That's
okay.
it. There you go.
Sweet.
There's the whole backstory. But it's played well because
Yeah.
you can really see that they have contempt for each other. Or rather, Locke has contempt for Morpheus. Morpheus is just chill.
Morpheus is very zen.
He
right?
is
He's very
the epitome of zen.
He's steadfast in his beliefs.
Yeah.
And he doesn't get rattled no matter what anyone says to him. He has his beliefs, and he believes them, and what he sees them become true.
Absolutely.
I mean, so he's very strong in his I forget the word I'm looking for. It escapes me, but he's very strong on what he believes in.
His convictions.
Convictions.
Yeah.
Thank you. That was the word I was struggling for. Strong in his convictions.
Pulled it right out of the air.
He did pull it right out of there. But he and he doesn't let anything stop him from doing what he needs to do. So far as just disobeying orders.
Yeah.
If he thinks the order's bad.
Exactly. Well, and the one time we really do see Morpheus shook is after Neo goes to see the architect.
Yeah.
Which is one of those scenes in a movie where you just go...
The architect?
The architect, yes. Now, it is...
That's why they entertain you with all the Neos in the background and the little TVs.
Well, that's what makes the scene interesting, because if you're just listening to the architect talk, you're going to fall asleep.
There's a mathematical equation, and you're this guy who has been six predecessors.
Exactly.
What? Oh, she doesn't know anything.
There's a meme GIF, and I've actually used it a couple of times in What's New in Nerd, where it's like blah, 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 what? Blah, blah, blah.
Maybe
and that's what it is.
Maybe they tried to get Ben Stein for the role, and he wasn't available.
Bueller. 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 Bueller.
No, actually, who they tried to get for the role of the architect was Sean Connery.
That would have been awesome.
And he turned it down to do the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen.
That was a fail.
Well, yeah, big fail.
Sorry, Sean, that was a bad one.
Exactly, but he also turned it down because he said, "I just don't get it."
Yeah, I mean, and
Yeah.
Sean Connery's that kind of guy. If he doesn't get it, he's not going to do it.
Exactly. So, I mean, good choice for him.
How much fun would it have been to have with Neo?
Ben Stein?
Neo? Yeah, I saw him in The Matrix last night. My friend's brother, sister. I mean, that would have been hilarious.
It would have been. It would have been really funny, actually. But that scene kind of, it stops all the action.
Yeah, it does.
Of course.
It's a movie killer.
It really is.
It didn't kill the movie, but it could have.
It came close.
Yeah.
But there is a lot of exposition in that scene. And unfortunately, in order to do exposition, you have to have people talk. What you don't have to do, though, is have somebody go on a 10-minute monotone monologue.
Yeah, it's if you're watching these movies late at night and you run into that one and you're a bit tired, you better put on a pot of coffee because you might not make it.
Yeah, exactly. And that's sad. But after that, after Neo goes to the source and he discovers that he's not the one, he's one of several, or 6 or 7 at
he's
that
the
point.
one, but there are repeatedly ones.
Exactly. He's the sixth. Yes.
Sixth incarnation of 100 years per cycle.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's a lot longer than 2199 as they think it is. That time period has been a heck of a lot longer. But after he leaves the source, he goes and saves Trinity. They get kind of stuck in the real world. They're in a ship that's being set on by sentinels, but they're just out of EMP range, and they start to throw the bomb at them. And that's where we really see, getting back to the point I was trying to make 5 minutes ago, that's where we really say, it was my fault, I did it. We really see Morpheus shook for the first time.
Yeah.
Because his ship is destroyed. And he says, I dreamed a dream, and now that dream is dead for me, or gone for me, sorry. And it's the only really time we see that shake in his resolve. But even so, he still has that resolve moving forward.
Absolutely does.
It's just placed a little differently. He still believes that Neo's going to save him.
He does.
And guess what? He does. Neo saves him. I mean, if you haven't seen the movies yet,
I seen it.
Why are you watching this? But Neo does end up, saving everything. That happens in the third movie. All right, so let's jump into this third movie.
Yeah.
And it's so funny because if you can see this here, I've got Matrix Trilogy, and I broke it down into all 4.
What?
Number 2 stops here on this single page.
What?
So and that should tell you all you need to know about the Matrix movies. 1 and 2.
What?
They're excellent.
They're the
films.
strongest 2 movies
For sure
in the series. Yeah.
Okay.
The third one, it's almost a continuation of the second one. I mean, it is a direct continuation of the second one.
But you get the feeling like it could have just been one really long movie.
Exactly right, and that's exactly what I was getting towards. They really kind of, the beginning of the third movie is just a recap of what just happened.
Yeah.
And shows Neo has detached himself from his brain.
Sure.
Which is weird. But we do find out that the power of the One extends beyond the actual Matrix. It's something that's actually ingrained in his DNA, and he can manipulate machines in the real world.
Yeah. Yep.
Which is very interesting.
Yeah, but they don't really do a lot with that. It's like 2 seconds. He
takes out the Sentinels at the end of the second movie, but also later on when they're heading towards Machine City, he's fending off all the bombs that they're sending his way. He's fending off he absorbs a Sentinel. I mean, it's some pretty crazy stuff, frankly.
Yeah, I guess it just doesn't feel very pronounced.
It's not. You're right.
I mean, the biggest thing about the third movie that you really remember is the fight with Smith.
Yeah. Well, without a doubt. Matter of fact, I have 2 things written down for the third movie, and one is Smith in all caps, because he really is the major problem. He has duplicated himself to the point that he has taken over the entire Matrix.
Yeah, and that the machines are on board with Neo, going to regulate and take care of them.
And if you fail, I won't.
We're going to duke it out. Yeah.
They're like, okay.
And it's a very interesting scene towards at the very end of the movie where Neo actually does figure it out and figure out what's going on. Before we get to that, though, I do want to talk about the fact that not only does the One have power in the real world, but Smith has actually found a way to have power in the real world as well. He does.
Yeah.
He has transferred himself into so many different programs and beings that one slipped through.
Yeah, definitely. You're right about that, sir.
Yeah, on purpose. He tried and succeeded.
Absolutely.
The Bane.
Bane, yes. Not Bane.
No, brother. Yeah, not him.
Not that Bane.
Let's not stand on ceremony here.
A different Bane.
Yeah.
Who ends up being Smith.
Does a great imitation of Hugo Weaving, frankly.
Goodness. And frankly, that was the reason he was cast.
He was fantastic. You really were like, wow, he's nailing it.
Mr. Anderson, I see you are as predictable in this world as you are in the other.
He's nailing Smith.
He did so well.
And he did a great job. And then, he's in the real world, which stands to reason, right? If you're talking about a world where, AI has come about and has become sentient beings, obviously artificial intelligence becomes sentient.
Sure.
Skynet and all that. If we're in a world...
There he goes again.
If we're in a world where that's happened, and, it stands to reason, a lot of science has postulated over time that, we're organic machines in some sense.
Oh, without
so
a
that
doubt,
if you can imprint on a hard drive, why couldn't you imprint in neural patterns in a brain? It's electricity.
Certainly.
I know I'm breaking it down as a 50,000 foot view. It's not, getting into the hard science of it, but
it's very broad.
But it's a reasonable supposition that it could be done.
Certainly. And in the Matrix, it does.
Right.
It does happen. Smith finds its way into the real world, and Neo is blinded. I hated that, frankly, but he could still see Smith because of his abilities outside of the Matrix.
Yeah.
Which is, it's kind of a cop-out, but whatever.
Yeah.
Either way, we end up at the main battle with 6 billion Smiths against one Neo.
Neo versus the Matrix.
Yeah, exactly. Neo versus the Matrix. And another kind of lazy writing cop-out is, well, they're just going to stand here and watch, and you and I are going to fight.
Yeah.
Which, that bothered me quite a bit. But Neo figures it out. It was said early on that he is your negative. He's your opposite. And Neo figures out, well, what happens to two negatives? You get -1 and +1, and you add them together. What do you get?
Yeah, and that's something that is while it's a very cool part of the whole series, it's also something that I feel like they didn't really hash out super great. It's a little rough on the edges.
I completely agree.
Because at one point the architect calls Smith like a or somebody calls it once that Smith is kind of like almost an offshoot of Neo's calculation trying to write itself, but they didn't really say that before, and then they kind of throw it out there, and then they kind of go from, well, you're his opposite.
Right.
So which is it? I mean, it's kind of a little rough.
If it was a balanced equation, it's just a balanced equation.
Right. Sure.
Then you wouldn't have the anomaly.
Understand.
Which is Neo. And so Smith being the opposite doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
Yeah.
But Neo figures that out and says, well, you know what? If he's my opposite and he duplicates into me, then poof, it all goes away.
Yeah, I like it more, to me, is more of, I would have run a little bit differently if it were me, when Neo goes and explodes the code of Smith in the first movie. They kind of started to go with, well, some part of Neo then got stuck with Smith, and I would have just run with that.
Sure.
Personally.
That would have made a lot more sense. Then you got like a Neo and a Dark Neo. And it could have been really, really, really cool. But as it stands, we got the
It's still cool. It's just a little rough.
It is. And to be fair, I'm a huge Matrix fan.
Yeah.
I absolutely adore the movies. I think they're wonderful. I enjoy the ride it takes me on. It's just a few things that don't make sense.
Yeah, of course. I love the Matrix too. I mean, I've seen all of them multiple times, including the new one. So it's not like we are giant fans of this franchise. It's just, that's what we do. We analyze nerdy stuff. I mean, you've seen it before. This isn't the first time.
And if you think that was bad, guess what? Buckle up, because we are headed right into the fourth movie.
Yeah.
And I have written down here 3 letters. WTF.
What the fuck is this? Cut it out, man.
Why the fourth?
Yes, why the fourth? That's exactly what that stands for. Thank you, Chuck. And Chuck, it's a point you've made several times. Go ahead, make it.
So, I like the fourth movie. I'm going to say that right in the beginning.
So do I.
I enjoyed it. It was a fun ride.
Yes.
I went into it expecting to hate it. Not hating to expect it, expecting to hate it. As you know, you guys have watched any of our What's New in Nerds, and we talked about it. I was not all jacked or excited about it. Phil was. But I was expecting to not like it, and I was pleasantly surprised. We went and saw it on opening day at a local theater on the big screen, and I enjoyed it. But
why are you laughing?
What did Father used to say? Everything before the word "but" is horse shit.
Nonetheless, if they do not make more Matrix movies, there's no reason to make this movie.
Then why the fourth?
Don't even make it at all, because it doesn't really advance the story.
No, what it is, it's a meta commentary on making the movie.
I didn't love the first one, like some of you. And frankly, I've got zero tolerance for anything that requires a syllabus and a highlighter. I like my games big, loud, and dumb.
Or being pressured to make the movie.
So heavy-handed.
Yeah.
About that, about all the themes, about today's society. It's just someone just took a hand and just went Beavis, butthead to Beavis to the audience from the Matrix production. And it was just
100%. Yes.
You know, but I still, despite that, I enjoyed it. It was a fun ride.
I did too.
But it was unnecessary.
I agree. And, you know, some of the highlights of it, the MPH, yeah.
Dude.
MPH was so good.
So good.
So good. But he's just freaking
He's good in everything. I don't think I've ever seen anything that he's in that he didn't kill it.
He kills it. Yeah, that's exactly right. And he plays kind of like the replacement for the architect.
Yeah, called the analyst, but he's kind of doing that job and more. It's like, you know, he got promoted and kept his old job, but now he's the architect too.
He's kind of a mashup between like the architect and the oracle.
Yep, 100%.
Really. And it's different. Really is. But he's trying to keep Neo in the Matrix.
I'm thinking I'm back.
He is.
Basically, they're feeding him blue pills and doesn't want him to meet up. And the really big change to the entire mythology is that the one isn't really the one.
Yeah.
It's the two.
Yeah.
It's both Neo and Trinity being together that makes Neo the one.
Right. And they kind of like, it's like, kind of, yeah. It's a little late in the game to change that.
It really is.
I don't have a problem with that if that's how it is from the beginning.
Sure.
You know, or even midway through. Even if you get halfway through the second movie and you discover what makes Neo the one is this relationship with Trinity, who's always there with the one. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, and to that point, that does kind of happen a little bit. And it's with the conversation with the architect, where Neo is talking to the architect, and the architect says, you know, you're drawn to the human race, and while everyone experiences this in a very general way, you experience it very focused vis-a-vis love, as he says. And it's really entirely focused on Trinity, and the entire reason that he decides not to return to the source is Trinity.
Well, that's true.
Yeah.
But it wasn't put in the same way as they then kind of shape it in the fourth movie.
No. It's not said the same way.
Yeah.
It's not presented the same way. You're absolutely correct. It is a similar concept, but it's definitely not presented that way.
And that's all fine and good if you make more movies from here.
Sure.
If you don't make more movies from here, it's like you just added that because you just wanted to point it out more. Oh, I would have liked to point it out differently in the other movies. Well, you need to take 2.5 hours to
do that?
To do that, just to do that? Why? You know, because I think The Matrix is a huge world. It's got all kinds of possible ideas you could do in this world, in this universe. And I personally would like to see more movies without Keanu and Trinity. No Keanu, no carrie-anne Moss, no Neo, no Trinity. Well, get this new crew, get Bugs, you know, all the people from the new movie, and start making movies with them.
I'd really love to see that. And, you know, we got a little bit of that with, like, the Animatrix and the Flight of the Osiris and, you know, that kind of stuff. But the entire Matrix Quadrilogy now does focus around Neo and Trinity. Yeah. And it's... let's see what else can happen in the world, you know?
Yeah, and that was one of my big beefs with if you make more movies, and I know I keep saying this, then this is a good transitionary movie to the next cast or
to
the
hand
next
it over.
spot.
Yeah.
But if you're not going to do that, then you shouldn't have made it.
Yeah, I agree entirely. I mean, we've seen enough going down the rabbit hole, you know? I mean, there's a lot of Alice in Wonderland stuff, and it's
very heavy.
It's very heavy in the fourth one.
The entirety of the song White Rabbit.
White Rabbit, yeah. Yeah, exactly. That frames Neo's kind of awakening.
And it's like, we knew that already.
Yeah, no, we got it. It is. It's just heavy-handed. And again, it's an enjoyable movie. It really is. It's just one that didn't need to be made. There's one more thing I really wanted to point out with the Matrix movies, and I couldn't point it out until we got to the fourth one because I wasn't sure if it was true until I watched the fourth one. Mm-hmm. And I actually sat there with a tuner, a guitar tuner, and made sure this was accurate before I reported it. And what it is, every single Matrix movie has an increase in the pitch of the theme.
Yeah.
From the first to the second is a full step higher. From the second to the third, it's a half step. And from the third to the fourth, it is another full step higher. And it's a cool thing because what it's doing is ramping up intensity by raising the pitch.
Sure.
And I thought that was really cool.
Yeah.
But I didn't want to mention it unless they did it in the fourth one. And guess what? They did.
They did it. They Dave Matthews did.
Sir, I just want to thank you for this opportunity.
They did it. And yes, we think they went too far.
Guilty as charged.
So there you go.
There you go.
I think with that, that's going to wrap our coverage for now on The Matrix. And I would like to remind you to check us out on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all that good stuff. And check us out on, Meta, The Matrix.
Sure.
We're there.
Metabook, yeah. We're there.
Yeah, Metabook. All right, with that, we will go ahead and say,
what's on your nerd card?